Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere mai, and welcome to the Niche Cast. We are coming at you on June 11th, fresh after a weird weekend of Aotearoa sport. The Warriors got the win, so we'll be chatting all about the Warriors win over the Cowboys. And the Blackcaps lost. The Blackcaps were touched up by Afghanistan, so we'll dive into that. We've got some serious continuation of White Ferns shenanigans. They just love to do really goofy things. So we'll touch on some White Fern stuff as well. We've got a full Flying Kiwis transfer window breakdown. The best Kiwi footballers, some of them are on the move, as well as Wellington Phoenix signing bits and pieces. And we've also got a little bit of NBL because, I don't know about you, Nick of the Wildcard, but Taylor Britt, he's a very fun NBL player considering he's usually the smallest bloke on the court, but he is instrumental. Like, he's a real string puller on the basketball court.
Yeah, I'm guessing you watched the same game as I did on the weekend where he was absolutely influential in the Canterbury Rams beating the Auckland Tuatara to go top of the table. I think it was Tuatara had won 10 games in a row and the Rams had won 9 games in a row. Now, the Rams have won 10 games in a row and the Tuatara have won 0 games in a row. And yeah, Taylor Britt, best player on the court in that game. And I'll save some of this stuff for later on, though, because, yeah, I think he will be the focus of our NBL chat.
We're from the thenichecache.com, where you can read about most of these stories at the moment live on the website. Got a Kiwi NRL spotlight on Rocco Berry, the Greytown Geezer. He had a nice little performance against the Cowboys, so he got Kiwi NRL spotlight treatment. There is that deep dive into Flying Kiwis transfers. There is a deep dive into White Fern shenanigans. Didn't write anything about the Blackcaps losing because, what are you going to say? They lost. They sucked. I don't know. There's only so many things you can say. However, I did drop some wrinkles, some pockets, some thingamajigs in the newsletter. So if you're signed up to our newsletter via Substack, thenichecache.substack.com, you would have read about some Warriors, some Blackcaps, some domestic football. You would have even read about football Ferns and Yitka Klimkova. I was very interested in what you wrote about Klimkova in our newsletter yesterday via Substack, as well as a full breakdown of NBL basketball. Like, this is stuff you're not going to find anywhere else in the world because most countries in the world aren't writing about New Zealand sports. So then we narrow it down, and I mean, the New Zealand media, who knows what they're up to? They're doing their thing. Shout out to them, having a crack. But we do things completely differently, and we focus on sports which are a lot more fun, and we actually offer proper insights, such as common sense about Yitka Klimkova, because apparently some bloke on the Herald, he wrote, "It is hard to see the 49-year-old coming back from this and returning to the dugout after her employment-related matter absence." And you do highlight how there's a lot of grey area in this situation with Klimkova.
Almost entirely grey area.
Yeah, it's grey matter. So that's happening, but also it's not hard to see the 49-year-old coming back from this and returning to the dugout. That she is literally coming back from this and returning to the dugout to coach the football Ferns. So you can actually find proper breakdowns of Aotearoa sporting matters via our newsletter every Monday and Friday. Sign up on Substack, thenichecache.substack.com. And if you like any of it, if you enjoy our coverage of Aotearoa sport, you can fund us straight up the guts. You can support us through Patreon. Join the Patreon whānau, patreon.com/elnichecache. You can also buy us a coffee, buy me a coffee /thenichecache. Our niche cache, maybe, who cares? The links are wherever you need to find them. And of course, you can upgrade your free Monday and Friday Substack subscription to a paid Substack subscription. And if you're a member of the Patreon whānau, or you've got a paid Substack subscription, you can then access our subscriber podcast. Usually we record this subscriber podcast on Thursdays. We record this on Tuesdays, then we bounce back with a bonus podcast on Thursdays. But the Blackcaps are playing on Thursday, and they need a win on Thursday. And we're going to be talking all sorts of Blackcaps here and now, but we're also going to be breaking down whatever happens on Thursday from the Blackcaps in our subscriber podcast on Friday. So the subscriber podcast this week will be a special Blackcaps reaction to their game against the West Indies. Massive game. Because then they play Uganda and Papua New Guinea. They've already lost to Afghanistan. Need a win against the West Indies. So we will be breaking that down on our subscriber podcast coming at you on Friday, as well as probably a Warriors versus Storm preview and any other Kiwi sports news that we want to chat about, or any other Kiwi sports things that members of the Patreon whānau and those with a paid Substack subscription want us to chat about. Any questions, comments, queries from the homies, we chat about it. So that is a bonus section for the generous folks supporting our mahi. And we always start our podcast with a dose of mindfulness. What do you got, Chief?
What I've got is not a sentence or a saying today, but a phrase, an idea. The phrase being oceanic feeling, which apparently was coined by a French fella named Romain Rolland in a letter to Sigmund Freud in 1927. There's your background. What it means, oceanic feeling, means a sensation of eternity, a feeling of being one with the external world as a whole, inspired by the example of Ramakrishna, among other mystics, blah, blah, blah. Oceanic feeling. I read that and I thought, I'm going to have to bend the mindfulness rules a little bit to get that one in there, because I like that concept. I don't know how to attain that concept, but I like that concept. Also like the oceanic part of it, you know, it's very like, you can just imagine standing on a hill looking out at the ocean as far as the eye can see kind of thing, and how that, I guess, refers to the sensation of eternity. I don't know, but it is a very, what's the word? A very, it's one of those mindfulness things where it like puts you in a place as well as like an intellectual idea.
Yeah, I've got no idea what you said for your definition, but as you're saying it, I was like, and then you followed it up with looking out into the ocean. And if you're ever feeling stressed or anxious or just a bit lost, just go find a high place and look out at the ocean, because that stuff will heal your soul. And that's what I was thinking about as you said, what was it? Oceanic
feeling.
Oceanic feeling. And obviously we are from Oceania. So
yeah.
There's that oceanic feeling of being in the South Pacific. Even if you're a silly bugger colonizer like you and I, half Pākehā, half Pālangi, we're still out here repping out Oceania, and we're doing it for all the brethren also existing in this lovely corner of the world where I know it's pretty good. It's pretty good to be down here, kicking back, being bull, doing our thing. So shout out to whatever your definition of oceanic feeling is, and also shout out to the oceanic feeling that we're all feeling as members of Oceania. And I mean, those distant ocean views are pretty easy to find when you live in Aotearoa or the South Pacific. So big up our corner of the world. And in our corner of the world, there is a little area, little pocket in the Polynesian capital of the world, might I add, called Mount Smart. And there's a team from Mount Smart called the Aotearoa Warriors, and they went over to Townsville. They had a good win over the Cowboys, and it was just a great win. It's just a great win. Far too good for the Cowboys. Even though, and I'm pretty confident that neither, I think who was in commentary? It was Warren Smith and someone else. Pretty sure they weren't there in Townsville. And that's fine. You can kind of sense how they're commentating. Are they at the stadium, or are they somewhere else? Because you do see that creeping into the commentary antics. We're just going to commentate this game from Sydney or whatever.
From a bunker, yeah. I think Warren Smith was doing the Storm game the next day as well, so that might be a clue.
Maybe.
I mean, you can fly between one and the other pretty easily in that time, but I don't know necessarily that he would have. But
yeah, there was just
I don't know.
There was just a disconnect between the commentary and what was happening on the field, as is usually the case in the NRL. Like those, but hey, at least you're not getting 4 commentators. Great commentator chat here. They are stretching the NRL stuff because they, like yesterday, they had 3 commentators in the commentator box, and then you've got the sideline reporter. So that is 4. That's 4 people helping us out. You had Vossi, you had Alexander, and Kronk, which is completely unnecessary, but that's what they do. But then recently for Warriors games in Auckland, you've had the 2 commentators, and then you've had Adam Blair and Poaching on the sideline. So you've had 2 dudes on the sideline, neither of whom actually do like sideline reporter things. It's quite a specific, and it's all like Brent Tate. He was doing the sideline for the Cowboys. Like, he did all right. It's quite a tricky thing to do, especially if you're a former player, because that's the role you need to have the most reportery things, right? Like, you need to go out and find bits of information. What's happening with the injury? What's happening with your team talk? Are you using your 18th man? All those little nitty gritty things you need to understand, because that's the commentators are coming to you on the sideline for that information. Like, you don't need 2 former players on the sideline. That's a bit weird. So I'm chatting shit about the Aussie commentators, but I also need to chat some shit about the Mount Smart commentators as well. I digress. The Warriors, well, sorry, I don't digress. I keep going, because the weirdest thing about that game was the constant threat of the Cowboys being able to score, heaps of tries in a very small amount of time. Throughout this game, the Warriors were thoroughly outplaying the Cowboys. The Cowboys were doing no 1%ers. The Cowboys were missing tackles all over the show. Chad Townsend could barely kick the ball 20 meters. The Cowboys sucked. And I'm pretty grateful that Todd Payton's not the coach of the Warriors at the moment, that we do have Coach Webster. Despite how bad the Cowboys were playing, and how dominant the Warriors were, the commentators kept telling us that the Cowboys were capable of scoring 10 tries in 10 minutes, 5 tries in 5 minutes. The Cowboys always a threat of a comeback. And you're like, I don't know, bro. The Cowboys suck. Like, what? You're telling me that the Cowboys can win this game? Because I don't see it. I don't see it. I see the Warriors as disgustingly dominant. And that was a great performance from the Warriors. And they ended up winning 42-12, despite that threat of the Cowboys being able to win the game in the last 10 minutes. So I thought it was an awesome game from the Warriors. And to be honest, that idea, you remember the kicking meters and kick return meters simplified battle that I highlighted last week. It was on display. And I'm not like trying to say that I'm some footy master, but when I have like a hunch like that and then you see it play out in the game, it's just a good moment to have the clarity of what's happening on the field. Statistically, the Warriors had 277 kick return meters to the Cowboys 109. Kicking meters. The Warriors had 701 kicking meters. The Cowboys had 614. And when you've got Shans Nickel Klokster averaging over 200 meters a game, and you're giving him that much time and space to run the footy back, the Warriors are just winning that territory battle. And if it's not Nickel Clockstad, it's Marcelo Montoya. If it's not him, it's Watene Zelezniak. And then the Cowboys also had a pretty mediocre kick chase. So their kicking isn't that good. The Warriors are kick return deities along with the Penrith Panthers. I'll check in that stat when I throw it to you, and I'll report back soon, because they were the second for kick return meters with the Panthers prior to this round, and then they kept eating up those kick return meters. They had over double the kick return meters than the Cowboys had. See, it's just a hard way to win a game of footy, and it's the Warriors kept starting sets 40 meters out from their try line, 50 meters out from their try line, and you're just winning the territory battle. And if you're winning that territory battle and the other team's having a few mishaps and the Warriors are fired up, that's an easy mahi win for the Warriors. And I'll throw this out here now. There's a lot of Sean Johnson chat. It's like, well, okay, kick back, like, let's cross that bridge when we get to it. People love to forecast what happens when you're full strength, when you got Sean Johnson and all these players are back and healthy. How many NRL teams are healthy? Like full strength healthy? It doesn't happen.
Origin week, probably none.
Yeah, so if you haven't noticed, it's pretty bloody tough to play rugby league in the NRL. You're going to get hurt, you're going to get suspended, HIAs, it's all happening. And the Warriors aren't going to be full strength very often. So kick back on the Sean Johnson chat. We'll just cross that bridge when we get to it. But Tamaita Martin's pretty good. Yeah, I get that. And he's playing, I think, career best footy. But whether it's Sean Johnson, whether it's Tamaita Martin, they can only do what they do if the Warriors are dominating the opponent physically, if they're winning that battle in the forward pack, if they're winning that territory battle. And I don't really enjoy the simplification of rugby league that it's all about the halfback. Tamaita Martin. I'm a big fan of Tamaita Martin. Fantastic just distributor and playmaker and leader of the team at halfback. But the Warriors are starting every set in good territory. The Warriors are dominating the Cowboys forward pack. Whenua Blake, Mitchell Barnett, Jackson Ford, Tohu Harris, Dylan Walker, Marata Niokore. And then there's all these other runners like Montoya and Watene Zelezniak. So I understand the role of a halfback. I understand how important these halfbacks are to setting up tries. But in this game, and in the previous two wins, in which a wide variety of players were used, the Warriors win because they dominate the opponent physically. Because when they do kick long, and they win those early tackles, they're driving the opponent back. They're winning the battle physically. There's just dominance. There's a bit of mongrel there. They're really engaged in the physical contest. And that's exactly what happened against the Cowboys. Respect to Griffin Neame. Love Griffin Neame. I actually think I was watching that game, and every run he took, like he always took a run when the Cowboys needed a bit of oomph. And I think Griffin Neame is like the new Matt Scott. Not similar body shapes, not similar styles in how they play footy, but similar roles, and they give the Cowboys what they need in the middle. But it wasn't Griffin Neame's best game, and the Cowboys forward pack got dominated. And that's how you win NRL games. And going back to the kick chase thing, I wrote this in the newsletter yesterday. First bomb the Cowboys put up, Val Holmes and Chad Townsend attack Nickel Clockstad before he gets the ball. Val Holmes hits him before he catches the ball. After that, the Cowboys don't compete for the ball. And I just didn't make much sense. Like, there's two extremes here. Like, anyone who watches footy can understand that. You're too early on one, you're not engaged in the other. And it was a very strange tactic that, to me, summed up where the Cowboys are at. And you don't see that kind of stuff from the Warriors. There's very clear plans, there's very clear styles of footy. And it was an enjoyable display of Warriors rugby league.
Including weathering the inevitable Cowboys late comeback that never happened as well. I did have a giggle when I read that, because you wrote that in the newsletter. I had a giggle when I saw that, because I was thinking the exact same thing. I think at one point, if I recall correctly, it got to if the Cowboys score here, then they're back in the game. They've still got a chance, when they were 24 points down with 8 minutes to go. I'm not even exaggerating on that. I'm saying that literally they thought they could score 4 tries in 8 minutes or something, which they scored 2 tries in 72 minutes up to that point. The numbers aren't quite adding up here, but okay, whatever. And that's assuming they could kick every goal as well, which not everyone's Zach Lomax. Not everyone can do that.
Or Adam Pompey.
Yeah. Or Adam Pompey. Yeah, great game off the tee in this one too. Yeah, fair play. Just probably because we were talking about before this game with the Warriors, how they would adjust to getting a few of their bigger names back in after having played so well whilst under strength in the previous couple of weeks, and playing really well in different styles as well from game to game, from it was Panthers and Dolphins, wasn't it? And then you could argue it was a different sort of task ahead of them. It's the Cowboys as well. Just finding ways to win, but then in this case, it wasn't just finding a way to win. It was finding a way to just absolutely dominate a team away from home. It's surely their most impressive performance of the season. And we were, that was the question mark, whether they could bring back some of these guys, whether they would revert to what they were doing at the start of the season when they were losing games, or whether they could bring in their big guns and add to the momentum that they'd had over the previous sort of 2-3 weeks, which they did. It was the positive outcome of those matters of how that could have gone. And just a super impressive victory from the Warriors, with just contributions across the board. Andrew Webster is 3-0 against Todd Payton now. What do you know?
Yeah, that can't go overlooked. They had 2 wins last year, and they've won the only game this year. Just touching on the kick return meters, NRL is a bit slow to update their stats, so I don't know if this is correct after round whatever it was. Panthers are first, 238.5 kick return meters per game. The Warriors are second, 228 kick return meters per game. They are the only teams in the NRL who average over 200 kick return meters. And that was on display against the Cowboys, because the Cowboys' kicking game was pretty short. And then there were lots of bombs, and those bombs, the kick chase around the bombs was pretty confusing to make sense of. So that was a key factor in the Warriors' win. One other thing about this run of 3 wins is that the fullback has been different in every game.
It has too.
So against the Panthers, it was Taintua Piki. Against the Dolphins, it was Dallin Watene-Zelezniak. And against the Cowboys, it was Nickel Klockstar coming back into the team. And I was thinking, okay, because I had talked about the different halves combination in those 2 wins. You had Tamari Martin and Nickel Klockstar against the Panthers. Then you had Tamari Martin and Harris Tavita against the Dolphins. And if we're talking about Sean Johnson versus Tamari Martin, Harris Tavita's playing his way into the top 17. I really like Harris Tavita, especially number 6. Said it before, say it again. I think he's a very good number 6 with his running, tackling, and left-footed kicking game. But again, really going to be at full strength. So you just you need the depth to make sure you can absorb the absences. But then you had a repeat of that halves combination against the Cowboys, Martin and Harris Tavita. You've had Paul Roach was hooker, but Wade Egan was playing against the Panthers. He got injured. Paul Roach came on. Then Paul Roach got injured against the Dolphins. And I think it was Freddie Lussick who came on. And then Egan was back with Lussick for this game against the Cowboys. So the key areas that I'm pondering at how the Warriors have got 3 consecutive wins is the fullback. So they've had 3 different fullbacks, and they've been playing at a high level with 3 different fullbacks, which is a fantastic indicator of where the Warriors are at. But also the forward pack. There's been a lot of changes in that forward pack. Like Tom Ale and Bunty Afoa didn't play against the Cowboys. And we've also, during this phase, we've also seen Jackson Ford move to the middle. We've seen Marata Neokore come back into the team. We've seen Kurt Capewell come back into the team. Tohu Harris had an exit and return. Whenua Blake didn't play against the Dolphins. Then he came back against the Cowboys. I haven't looked into the forward pack stuff because, to be honest, there's just more players to keep track of. Where like halves and fullback, you know, there's one player there too. You know, it's a lot easier to keep track of. But as I talk through it, and as everyone watches these 3 games, you know that the forward pack is different, and yet the Warriors are still able to win that battle of the forward packs. Like they have been able to dominate their opponent in the forwards, kind of regardless of who's playing in the forwards. So you add that with the changes at fullback, the changes at hooker, the changes in the halves. Oh no, you got 3 pretty comprehensive wins and impressive wins that stem from not just a fantastic level of depth, but that depth needs to be able to do the job in the NRL. And I'm pretty impressed with this run of 3 wins, especially 2 of them have come in Australia. They beat the Panthers at Magic Round, which I think was still a Warriors home game, but they had to travel to Brisbane. And they won in Townsville. Like the Warriors have 2 wins in Townsville under Andrew Webster. There's nothing scary about Townsville. There's nothing scary about the Cowboys. And yeah, it's just good times for the Warriors because it was getting a bit weird there with the string of losses.
Yeah, well, that's the funny thing about the depth, isn't it? Is that the depth players didn't just come in and do a job. They came in and reminded the first choice players how to do their job, and they've taken the hint, which is exactly how that was hoped to unfold. They're back to an even record. I think it's 6-6 with a tie in there as well. So they're not in the top 8, but this was, again, another thing we talked about prior to this game was how important this game could turn out to be down the line, given that these are the way the table's shaping up. These are 2 teams who are probably competing for that top 8 kind of spot. And so massive 2 points for the Warriors, massive performance. Only downside would be Chanel Harris-Tavita's vicious assault on Chad Townsend when he gently dropped the ball in his forehead. But I did find that to be a nice humorous moment. It was a nice way to cap off. It was actually quite a funny game in a weird way.
Like, to be honest, Townsend, I don't know what he did either. You know,
he did nothing. Neither of them did anything. It was weird. It was just like, well, I sent one, so I better send another one so no one gets upset.
Yeah,
but fair enough.
Grateful because the Warriors, because in that instant, what Harris Tavita did was worse than what Townsend did. So at least there was like, hey, you both got simp and it's all good. How I would add though, old mate Ziggy, I think he's one of the best refs in the NRL. Not just because his name is Ziggy, but like just straight up and down, he's a good ref. Aside from that Simbin situation, which I don't know, I was grateful for. I don't really care. Like it spiced up the game because the Cowboys weren't doing shit. So I don't mind Ziggy. I reckon Ziggy's good. He's definitely not the El Senor Refe, which is Chris Butler. But he's yeah, I like Ziggy. I like Ziggy. I am interested in the Warriors forward pack. As we've laid out, they've been winning games with different players in this forward pack as well as different players throughout the team. I can't go past this little nugget though. Jazz Tavanga, off contract, Jazz Tavanga, I believe. He has played 8 games this year. And he's got 6 wins. He's got 1 loss.
So there are only 6 wins.
6 wins, 1 loss, and 1 draw. And I think that's an interesting little nugget, because Jazz Tavanga is clearly helping the Warriors win. Especially when a lot of different players have been rotated in and out of the team. And I like I know every game you see Jazz Tavanga spin out of a tackle. I like that spinny move that he's got. I'm not sure if it counts as tackle breaks, because I saw him do it against the Cowboys, but that must not have broken the tackle. In the wins over Panthers and Dolphins, he had 6 tackle breaks and 3 tackle breaks, which for a middle forward is pretty damn impressive. But I'm liking his impact to the Warriors. Specifically, it's like he is a small forward, but he's not a small forward like Dylan Walker. Because he's not fast, he's not overly skillful. Like Dylan Walker can play any position on the field. You can't put Jazz Tavanga in the halves. You can't put Jazz Tavanga at centre. And they would probably roll with Dylan Walker covering hooker if they had to, ahead of Jazz Tavanga. But Jazz Tavanga is just a straight up middle forward. And he does it very well with his smaller stature, quick feet, and just the impact he provides. I think it's it's not similar to Aaron Clark, because Aaron Clark with the Titans is very explosive and very aggressive, because I think he was a half when he was coming up through the grades in Auckland, and then he moved to hooker, which is where he made his debut with the Warriors. So he's got that background, whereas Jazz Tavanga's been a lock and a little bit of hooker throughout his career. But Jazz Tavanga is contributing to winning footy for the Warriors. And when he plays, the Warriors usually win. So that's something interesting to keep an eye on. And I'm also changing my perception of the Warriors forward pack because of what we've seen over the last few weeks. When the Warriors signed Kurt Capewell, many of us, including myself, but this was based on stuff coming out of the Warriors, it was all about Marata Niokore moving to the middle. But it's been Jackson Ford who's moved to the middle. So there was that log jam at edge forward where you had Capewell forward and Niokore. You've got Jacob Laban in the depth chart as well. At the moment, they have shifted forward to the middle. Niokore has played on the right edge. Mitchell Barnett has been playing left edge. So there's also been a little bit of a move from Mitchell Barnett away from prop and into the edge forward position. Let me check out Mitchell Barnett. He's played 5 games at edge forward this year, and he has played 8 games at prop. But the 4 of his 5 edge forward games have come in the last 4 games. So he's played 4 consecutive games at edge forward. So let me try and break this down in a simpler way. Basically, Jackson Ford and Mitchell Barnett have swapped. So Ford has come into the middle, Barnett's gone to the edge, and if Niokore and Capewell are both fit and healthy, they are rotating through that right edge spot. Even though Barnett's he's not playing full games on at left edge. So you might have Kurt Capewell swap in playing both edges, which he can do, or Jackson Ford can go back to that left edge. I had noticed earlier in the season, like Jackson Ford's been yanked around all over the place in a nice way, not in a White Ferns way, because he was playing left edge last year with Niokore and Josh Curran on the right edge, and then at some point this year I saw him playing right edge during the losing streak, but now he's just gone straight into the middle. And this is a pretty clear... I don't think it's unique to the Warriors, because the Bulldogs, they rolled out a smaller forward pack under Cameron Ciraldo with a lot of utilities or edge forwards playing through the middle. Like Josh Curran only really played right edge coming off the bench for the Warriors, but now he's playing through the middle at the Bulldogs. And that is a Ciraldo plan at the Bulldogs. And the Warriors, like between... Let me check this forward pack that played against the Cowboys. You have Jackson Ford, he's an edge forward playing in the middle. You got Niokore, Barnett, and Kurt Capewell, who are all edge forwards playing in the team as well. So there's a lot of edge forwards playing, which we shouldn't view them necessarily as edge and middle. Like many of these Warriors forwards are just forwards. They just play in the forwards. One of them's name is Ford. So they're forwards and there's a forward. And funnily enough, the guy whose name is Ford is the best example of these guys just being forwards. So shout out to Mr. Ford. But that versatility is quite important for the Warriors, I reckon. And obviously, we've seen Niokore Barnett play through the middle. And Kurt Capewell just pops up everywhere. He's a bit chaotic to watch because he's ripping all over the show. But that's what the Warriors need. That's what they have. And that's what Coach Webster enjoys in his players. And of course, Wade Egan was back. So we got the full repertoire of no-look passes. And he was pretty dynamic out of dummy half, 7 dummy half runs for 73 meters. When you add in Egan averaging over 10 meters per run on 7 dummy half runs, Freddie Lussick averaged 11 meters per run out of dummy half, 2 dummy half runs. That's the Warriors hookers tearing up the Cowboys middle. And then Nickel Clockstar was running around the ruck as well as his kick returns. So just a few details there about the Warriors' performance. They are back in Auckland at Mount Smart next weekend, I believe, against the Storm. And we will be previewing that game in our subscriber podcast on Friday. Also, shout out to the Jersey Flag Warriors. They had a win in Fiji. The Fijian Silktails under-21s team, they're not very good this year, but that's all right. I think it's their first year in Jersey Flag. And as you see with the Fijian Drua in Super Rugby, they are much better in Fiji. So you can't really assume that it's going to be an easy game when you go to Fiji. It's a whole different beast playing any Fijian team in Fiji when they're also playing in Australia and New Zealand. So that was a pretty solid win for the Jersey Flag Warriors. And I think they have won 3 games in a row? 3 or 4. 3 games in a row and 5 of their last 7. And as I've said a few times, that has coincided, this winning run has coincided with a lot of SG ball players moving up to Jersey Flag. So again, the Warriors are winning in the NRL, New South Wales Cup, who had a bye this weekend, and Jersey Flag with a full depth chart getting game time. Under 19 dudes are winning in Jersey Flag, under 21 and under 19 dudes are winning in New South Wales Cup. New South Wales Cup dudes are winning in the NRL. That tells you a lot about the Warriors system and how impressive their system is in getting dudes to do a job, moving up a grade, but also the ability of the players to step up and perform at a higher grade. The most interesting thing, though, about that Jersey Flegg win was Talon Egan playing at fullback. And he's the younger brother of Wade Egan, who is part of this young crew of Aussie playmakers who the Warriors have on their books, of course, with poke fun at Jet Cleary being signed, and how much buzz that got, which completely overlooked the fact that the Warriors have Talon Egan, Jesse Sorich, Luke Hansen, and another dude, Jack Thompson, who helped the Warriors win the Harold Matthews Cup competition. Jesse Sorich has moved into the halves of the Jersey Flegg team, and you've also got Talon Egan getting his first game at Jersey Flegg level. He played fullback, so that's an interesting little selection there, and they won. So they must have been good. So that's, and again, 11 seems to be the magic number. 11 players of the under-21s team this week are under-19s. So I like that. I like what's happening at the Warriors at the moment. Good development, good system, and good performance. Winning footy. Just winning footy all round. Just quickly on
just one question on that. With the youth grade teams, blooding players from like the grade, the age development grade beneath a lot, as you're saying there, like, has that been happening the whole season, or has that been accelerated because the first team have sort of had to draw in a lot more players, which then obviously has a flow-on effect from grade to grade to grade? Because it seems like all these all the grades seem to be finding good winning form at around the same time, which, if you are blooding a lot of youngsters from the start, would make sense, right? It's, take a month or two to get settled into the thing, you figure out the levels, and then you start realizing, okay, this is how we win games here, and now they're doing that kind of thing. So, like, has that been a process from the start, or has it been like, well, obviously it's been a process from the start, but I guess, has it been accelerated because of the first grade stuff?
I think it's been accelerated. Yeah, that's a correct way to paint this picture. But it's been accelerated by adversity.
Yeah.
So that's the overarching storyline here. That is the most encouraging thing. To be honest, it's the most encouraging thing at Mount Smart. Is that their winning footy has come under adversity, and they're winning in all three grades, and they're winning under adversity. And like the SG Ball team wasn't that good, but the SG Ball team, a lot of those dudes have moved up to under-21s and New South Wales Cup, and they're winning. So that's pretty interesting. It doesn't make much sense, but all we can judge them off is what's happening, and they're winning in the top three grades under adversity. And that is very encouraging. Your Dragons smacked up the Tigers.
Not a lot of adversity there.
Not a lot of adversity, and that's, I do have one Kiwi NRL wrinkle to highlight in a jiffy, but I was curious. Obviously, we got the Otahuhu Dragons. Big up to them. Kiwi NRL wrinkles there. But Warriors are winning. Dragons beat up the Tigers. It's just a time to praise Jateroa, praise God. You're not the Tigers, right? Like, when these teams aren't shambolic. And like, I've poked fun at the Bulldogs plenty of times in recent years. They're not the Tigers. Isaiah Papali'i's got away from the Tigers, so shout out to him. Unfortunately, a Kiwi is the coach, and Benji Marshall, and I don't really see him fixing the Tigers, so that's a bit rough. And also, I'm fascinated by what happens with Stafford Toa, because I think he's too good to play for the Tigers, but he's out injured at the moment, so you can't judge him there. But I mean, you just played against the Tigers, and I've been ranting about how good the Warriors are at right now across their top three grades. So it's a nice little juncture to just take a moment of gratitude that, there's no Tigers around here.
There's no Tigers. They're native to some other part of the world. Yeah, I mean that was, dare I say it, that was a close game at halftime. There was times in the first half where I was definitely not expecting it, but I was open to the possibility of the Dragons beating the Panthers one week and losing to the Tigers the next week. Like I thought, that's not off. That's not out of the rounds of possibility here. Until suddenly it was, because the second half, the Tigers just like, at one point, I think they flashed a setup on the screen, and the Tigers had not completed a set yet in the second half, and the Dragons had already scored like 2 or 3 tries at that point. Like they're piling on the points before the Tigers had even been able to get through a set, which was just shocking for what was, I think it was like 14-12 at halftime or something like that. Like it was real close, and then the Dragons just annihilated them in the second half. And I felt very sad seeing the clips of Benji Marshall talking afterwards, just looking like, I don't know what to say, kind of thing. Like, what can he say? Like, what do you do after that? I hope they do give him time though, because it just seems like if you sack the coach after 1 year, where he's inherited a bad team, like, well, sorry you didn't turn the Tigers into a premiership winning outfit in 12 months, but they do have a marquee signing or two turning up next year, and I think you do need to give that time. I think it's very easy to just blame the coach and look to make quick snapfire moves, which aren't actually going to improve the situation. It's just change, but it's not change for the sake of improvement. It's just change for the sake of change. It's just like being frisky and reactive. Can't help but think a little bit about what was saying about Yeka Clover at the start of the thing. It's like, is she the best coach the football Ferns have ever had? No. Is she the worst? Also no. Somewhere in the middle. She's okay. She's not dealing with a particularly great set of players, which is getting better and better and better every tour. Like there's a lot of young players in there who are improving heaps, including finally starting to see some of those creative players. But like, if you got a team that doesn't have a lot of creativity, you're not going to score goals regardless of who the coach is. Pep Guardiola wouldn't get a better tune, sort of thing. You got to say, like, I don't know, you just got to be patient and allow things to take their course. I feel that way with the Tigers a little bit. It's like, you're not going to turn this around in 1 year. So if you've got a beloved coach in terms of the person that Benji Marshall is at West, like, you just got to ease up and say, well, 2 to 3 years minimum, and if it doesn't work, well, at least we gave you all the opportunities we could have, kind of thing. I think in general in sports, there's way too much of that snap judgment. How can we change things and fix it right now, without realizing that? I mean, the Warriors season is a good example of, like, they weren't doing a lot of, losing games, picking the same team every week, playing the same way. It wasn't working, but they were sticking true to an identity, to where when they did start to figure things out, which ironically did come when the bunch of those guys were injured, and you got to swap it around a little bit, and some of those death guys come in, but there is a foundation still there that they weren't going to compromise. I don't think a lot of teams who are in losing positions spend enough time building those foundations. So maybe the Tigers in 2027 will be better, who knows, but not in 2024, that's for sure.
And they're not very deep in the Kiwi NRL stocks, so who cares about the Tigers apart from gratitude that we are not the Tigers? I am curious about the Eels though, because they do have a lot of Kiwi NRL talent. Bailey Simonson's suffered a pretty major injury by the sounds of it. Dylan Brown's in the halves. Widemu Gregg's come back. He's playing through the middle. I think Makatoa was in the squad for the Cowboys game yesterday, and it would be very, very Eelsy if he didn't play, because that's usually what happens at the Eels. Let me double check. He was a replacement, so all good. It was a tough game for Dejan Arce. Like, he was playing at centre, and he's not a centre. Like, he's a half, but they put him at centre, and I mean, the Eels just aren't very good defensively. But again, like, all this stuff about the Eels is what you're saying with the coach. And I am concerned about the Eels because they do have a lot of Kiwi NRL talent in their NRL team. but they got an interim coach. Like, how are you supposed to get better if you've sacked your coach a third into the season? Like, you're not going to get better with an interim coach for this long left in the season. And you could, like, in theory, I think the Eels are a better footy team than the Bulldogs, but you could see that the Eels didn't really have a soul as that game came into a climax. The Bulldogs, they've got a very clear identity, a very clear style, soul of who they are and what they do. And when that game came into the last 15, 10 minutes with the result in the balance, the Bulldogs showed up and the Eels didn't show up. And so I am a little bit concerned about that Kiwi NRL talent at the Eels, because, like, how are you supposed to get better under an interim coach for half the season? It's a bit ridiculous, and they don't have a great pipeline either. They've got lots of situations along with the Tigers where managers are involved. Warriors got rid of that shit. Warriors are a well-run organization. They are one of the best-run organizations in the NRL, and you're seeing that in the results, the system, and the development, the performance, and all that other stuff. One last thing. On Friday, I was pretty hyped. I wrote this in the newsletter that we send out every Monday and Friday evening. I was pretty excited about Cronulla Sharks footy, because the Cronulla Sharks had named Richie Tupuaile, who was an absolute big bopper from Christchurch. Unfortunately, he didn't actually play. In this game, and neither did Salisi Ata, who is from Auckland, Otahuhu Jr., but Ata moved up to New South Wales Cup, so he was a late selection for New South Wales Cup. Newtown Jets had a big win in the Cronulla Sharks system. And Felix Fa'atili was the only one left on my funky trio who was playing for the Sharks jersey flag team. He was starting prop, he scored a try, that's all he does, and he is massive. The thing here, though, well, there's a couple of things. Felix Fa'atili's from Christchurch. Richie Tupuaile's from Christchurch. I think they went to the same school, St. Thomas of Canterbury, but Tupuaile was playing first 15. So he joins the Sharks from rugby union. However, Fa'atili, Ata, and Tupuaile, they are all massive. Mobile, powerful, skillful, big boppers. And Aotearoa has no shortage of big boppers around the Kiwi NRL pipelines. In the NRL, on the rise to the NRL. But this trio of Sharks big boppers, Ata, and this isn't, I'm going to say this in order of how they are ranked in the Sharks system. Ata, Fa'atili, Tupuaile, trio of big boppers that you need to watch out for with the Sharks. The Sharks also have Sione Latu, who I think is from Palmerston North, might have gone to school in Wellington, big bopper who was playing SG Ball. Manako Piutau, big bopper who was playing SG Ball. Pharrell Gray started as a big bopper who was playing SG Ball, ended up as a winger who was playing SG Ball, and he scored a couple of tries, I think 2 tries in his first game of jersey flag on the wing. So if you do have if you're just looking for a little pocket of Kiwi NRL funk to tap in with, you got to stay tuned for the Sharks, because they love big, powerful dudes from Aotearoa, and they've had a fantastic Kiwi NRL recruitment drive. They've got a lot of them in their setup, and Ata is the closest to NRL, but I don't think Fa'atili will be far behind, and hopefully we see Tupuaile play a game of footy this season, because he missed a large chunk of the start of the season. He was named to play his first game this weekend, didn't play, so we'll stay tuned what happens there. And again, same little vibe. If you're looking for a Cricket World Cup team, T20 World Cup team to tap in with, Watch out for the Netherlands because they got Max O'Dowd, Logan Van Beek, and Tim Pringle. Tim Pringle, T20 extraordinaire. He played in the last T20 World Cup in Australia, and he's been playing Super Smash. He's playing all formats of domestic cricket for Northern Districts, and he's also playing for the Netherlands in this World Cup. But the Blackcaps are lost. And the more I thought about this, like, the less I care about anything that happened in the game. Well, there's a few small things, but if you're not selecting your best cricketers, you're not going to win. And they didn't select the 11 best T20 cricketers from New Zealand. And this is sketchy territory because this is what the White Ferns do, and the White Ferns lose. And I think it's just a little bit too cutesy for my liking. Isodi's one of your best 11 cricketers. Tim Southey's one of your best 11 cricketers. This is all strictly T20 stuff. I reckon Rachin Ravindra is one of your best T20 cricketers. And I reckon Jimmy Neesham's just straight up one of your best T20 cricketers. Those dudes weren't playing. And we can go through player for player. I made some level of argument case for these things in our newsletter yesterday. There's stats that back it up, but this is just my opinion, but I think it's a pretty compelling opinion. You just got to keep it simple. Select your best players and have a crack. And as soon as I saw that team named for this game against Afghanistan, I was like, ooh, this is dangerous territory. Because you're not selecting your best T20 cricketers to play a game of T20 cricket. And you reap what you sow. How do you assess that opinion?
Well, first, I do have a confession to make about this game, which is that I couldn't actually watch it live because I had my own sporting activities to partake in. So I had to leave right around 11:30. And that meant I saw the anthems and I saw the team list and I didn't see any of the actual cricket. And then obviously by the time I got home from football that evening, I knew the score. And I just couldn't put myself through watching a replay or even the extended highlights. I've only done the short highlights. So I'm glad you said that the game itself was less relevant. It's good because I can't speak too much on the game itself. You'd have to fill me in if there was key stuff there, other than what I've seen of just like dropped catches, sloppy wicket keeping, soft dismissals, like not taking wickets up front and stuff like this, which just seems the obvious thing to say is that they looked undercooked. And frankly, the obvious thing is sometimes the correct thing because they kind of did look undercooked. And maybe those the lack of warm-up games actually was more of an issue than it felt like it might have been. It's not that it wasn't an issue. It's that I think we felt this was an experienced enough team that when faced with an issue, they would be able to overcome it. Not that not playing warm-up games was in any way advantageous or not disadvantageous, but just that they'd be able to overcome the disadvantage, and they did not. And yeah, I had a similar vibe without having to been able to see the game and experience it unfold. I raised the eyebrows when I saw the team list. You know, I'm thinking that's just Matt Henry actually one of your 11 best T20 players when he's played less than 20 T20 internationals and only really in the last few months pushed that thing. Whereas Tim Southey's been in pretty good form there. Like, why is Sodi not playing when we've been talking about it being a spinning wicket? I mean, if it's a spinning wicket, spinning not just wicket, but spinning conditions throughout this whole World Cup expected. If that's the case, you don't drop one of your two frontline spinners to pick a bunch of part-timers. That doesn't make sense. You go all in on your best frontline spinners, which they didn't do that. And yeah, the the Conway slash Ravindra thing, that only looks better. They ignored us on that, but we're only looking better for that opinion since then, because that just felt like a ticking time bomb. And then what do you know? Like Devon Conway gets out with a heavy bottom hand, chipping the ball up gently to a fielder. Again, like how many times have we seen him get out for that kind of dismissal? Just in general, how many times do you see him get out pushing at the ball outside off stump? Sometimes he inside edges it, sometimes there's the leading edge, sometimes he just chips it up. You can't keep doing this to us, bro. Like you gotta hang in there. I didn't see him bat, but apparently the runs he did score were all pretty streaky as well. So that's not looking, and not to mention some fumbly wicket keeping stuff. Like that's not a great look. So yeah, I had some worries from the moment I saw the team list, and apparently those worries were foretold.
Like everyone can see how the lack of preparation didn't help. We got smoked by Afghanistan. It's obvious that it didn't help.
Yeah.
But you didn't select your 11 best cricketers. So I'm not, and you like everything we were saying in pre-tournament about trying to twist the lack of preparation in a positive way, experience and all those things. Well, your two most experienced T20 bowlers aren't in the team.
Two of the highest wicket takers in the history of this format.
So how can wait, and further into the lack of preparation and being underdone, Rachin Ravindra was the third most active IPL player for the Blackcaps, but he's not selected. It didn't really make a lot of sense given the situation. Like if you're, regardless of your preparation, if you put your 11 best cricketers up and you lose like that, fair play. Opposition was better, preparation sucked, we can get into all that nitty gritty. But if you're not going to play any warm-up games and then not select your best players, that's a very dangerous line to be waltzing down. And Matt Henry's not a first 11 bowler. What are we doing? He's all right. He's solid, but he's not.
Yeah, he's like worthy of being in the squad, but first 11 for a borderline must-win game at the start was kind of shocking.
Yeah, for sure. And whether it's Santner, whether it's Sodhi, whether it's Southey, either one of them is better for this situation than Matt Henry. And this is a fascinating little phase for Devon Conway because he's pretty fragile up the top. And you've got this dude, Rachin Ravindra, who just seems straight up better. Like, he's just a better batter right now.
Big game Rachin.
Big game Rachin, who just casually had a strike rate of 161 in the IPL. It seems useful for this situation. Again, if you're underdone going into a T20 World Cup, why don't you select the dude who's played the most cricket? He's played more cricket than Ferguson, Henry, Santner, Williamson over the past few months. Like, we're not cozying up to the IPL. And there's only so much of a connection you can draw between the IPL and this T20 World Cup. But if we're looking into the preparation for the tournament and we're looking into how these players were building into a T20 World Cup, well, Rachin Ravindra was one of the most active. In a situation where there's no warm-up games and you've also got your two of your most experienced T20 international bowlers not in the team, like that Ravindra, Southey, Sodhi bracket is definitely your first 11. I'm still big on Jimmy Neesham. Like, Jimmy Neesham is just one of the best sluggers New Zealand has. And he's done it all around the world, whereas Mark Chapman only does it in Pakistan. I don't know, like this just I don't like it when the Blackcaps do White Ferns things. Like it's just then we're getting into like, oh, is this a New Zealand cricket thing? As opposed to separating them. And after one game of the T20 World Cup, the the Blackcaps are doing a pretty good White Ferns impersonation.
Yeah, I mean, this like the the lack of warm up games is a disadvantage which can be overcome, but it's like when you, in order to overcome it, basically what it does is like the margins for error elsewhere are smaller because you got to be sharper from the get go. You got to overcome. You got to fight through adversity like the Warriors have been doing. Um, to do that, you need to be you need to be like a, I don't know. You just can't be taking risky. You can't be doing risky things elsewhere. You need to like another one of them themes that we go back to a lot. Like you need to simplify if you're going to overcome these things. Like you can't be adding to the risk factors by doing so many things. Like Matt Henry's just not been a first 11 T20 guy, but we're going to chuck him in there. That's risky. I yeah, I feel like it sounds like you reckon all four of the guys on the sideline probably should have been in the first 11. I could go either way on Neesham just because I can appreciate why you might pick Michael Bracewell ahead, and I don't know if you can fit him in as well as Chapman. Like I think you'd need to drop Chapman for one of the bowlers, is what I'm saying. So I don't know if you could do all of that. But if Daryl Mitchell's bowling the second to last over of the match, then Jimmy Neesham should have been playing. Like simple as that. If Daryl Mitchell's bowling that over, Jimmy Neesham should have been bowling that over instead. Finn Allen can't bat in the second innings, apparently. Like that's a risk factor as well. And he got out for a golden duck to set things on their not so merry way. We know that Devon Conway's form's been a risk factor. We know that Mark Chapman's batting outside of Pakistan has been a risk factor. There's too many. There were too many of these things in this game, and it blew up in their face. It was just too many risks. And you can't expect all of these things to just steady as she goes. It'll be all right. Like you have to be a little bit like step on the front foot and be a little bit more proactive with your batting, but also with your team selections and just your general approach for these kind of things. It was so weird because it's the kind of stuff we have seen from Blackcaps teams in the past, but not the recent past. Like it got very was it 2016 Champions Trophy vibes when we lost to Bangladesh in there and didn't make it out of the group phase. It felt a little bit like that, and I don't enjoy that. However, I can't remember if we did discuss this or not, but I would have said prior to the tournament, I kind of think Afghanistan is the tougher matchup for the Blackcaps, a tougher matchup than the West Indies. So if they beat the West Indies on Thursday, and then they get big wins, which they're going to be required. They're going to have to, it's not very nice of them, but they're going to have to thrash the minnows. They're going to have to be very rude to Uganda and Papua New Guinea. But those are games which they can boost their net run rate a lot, which has taken some serious damage from this Afghanistan loss. But they can overcome. It's like you can get, they have to beat the West Indies, and they're probably going to need Afghanistan to beat West Indies as well. But those things can happen. Or there's some bad weather, so maybe some rain out stuff. If it doesn't, well, it doesn't look like England or Pakistan are going to make it out of their group stages either. So at least we're not alone.
Can you hazard a guess at Daryl Mitchell's T20 international bowling economy rates and his economy rate in 6 overs of IPL bowling this year?
Are they similar numbers?
Yes.
Then I'm going to say 9.5 runs per over.
That's pretty generous. Daryl Mitchell, he's only bowled 95 balls of T20 international cricket, concedes 10.35 RPO. And in the IPL this year, he conceded 11.6 RPO. Similar vein, Lockie Ferguson's actually been really good at T20 bowling this year, average of 12.9, RPO of 5.9, in the IPL, he went for 10.6 RPO. And he was all right against Afghanistan, but I don't really know why we're bowling Big Dazza Mitchell too much. So that's an interesting move. Any other final Blackcaps thoughts or T20 World Cup thoughts that you'd like to get off your chest?
Well, I mean, maybe just to reiterate the fact that if we have to go down, at least we can take England down with us somehow. Because there's a very funny situation playing out there where, because they got smashed by Australia, which, by the way, I don't know if you watched that game, but I was watching that one on, I think it was Sunday morning. And the commentary team, which was largely English, helmed by, I think, Nasser Hussain, and Mike Atherton was there as well, was doing the same thing as it was like Josh Butler got off to a nice start, but they're chasing 200. It's like you're not even halfway there, and then Josh Butler gets himself out playing a silly reverse sweep, which like wasn't a paddle for one, it wasn't a smash for a boundary, it was just a Devon Conway chip straight to a fielder. And then they couldn't score a run for like the next 5 overs. They could barely score a run through the middle spells, more or less when Adam Zampa came on. But then Moeen Ali hits a couple sixes off Glenn Maxwell, and suddenly it's, well, England are back in this game now. Like, that's the momentum shift that they needed. It's like, you need 14 runs and over at this stage. Like, you can't do that every time. Glenn Maxwell's not going to bowl again after this. Like, they're back to Hazelwood and Stark and Cummins. So good luck. It was very similar to that Cowboys thing where it's like, well, they're not out of it yet, England. Their batting lineup is so destructive. They got so much power all the way down. Livingston can come in and hit sixes. It's like, well, he didn't know, he didn't, and he didn't win, and it wasn't even close. And because their game against Scotland got rained off, and because Scotland had a huge win over Oman, the most hilarious thing that can happen now would be that Australia deliberately not lose, but just win slowly against Scotland. Like, don't pad the net run rate, but specifically don't ruin Scotland's net run rate, so that Scotland finish ahead of England and England get knocked out. I think the Australians might just be petty enough to actually do that, which would be very, very, very funny.
I don't want to talk too much shit about England just yet. Just yet.
Yeah, well, we'll see how we go on Thursday before we, yeah.
I will admit, though, I'm not a huge fan of Matt Henry as a T20 first 11 bowler. But I do love a bit of Matt Henry, the slugger. And I was dipping into my optimism bag when Trent Boult and Matt Henry were batting out the end of that innings, because Trent Boult's just blocking it. And I'm like, Matt Henry can bang some sixes, so maybe they've got a chance here. But they didn't, like the Cowboys and like England. So we will wait and see. Hopefully things improve against the West Indies. And I like a lot of the messiness in that game, to me it all stems from just trying to be too obtuse with the selections. Just select your best players, play your best cricket, keep it simple. I think they got a bit too tricky, and when you're getting a bit too tricky and you're underdone, no preparation, maybe a bit too big for your boots, then you start to see those sloppy things that we don't usually see from the Blackcaps. It was a very strange performance. It was the type of performance that, I can't lie, it dented my faith and confidence in the Blackcaps system and what they're up to. But we'll wait and see what happens against the West Indies. West Indies at home is going to be a bit tricky, though. Like, you said the Afghanistan game was more tricky than the West Indies. I think they are as tricky as each other. So we'll wait and see what happens in this second game. Fun T20 World Cup. I'm really enjoying the T20 World Cup because guess what happens when you welcome the world of cricket into major events? It's fun. Like, let's spread cricket to the world. Let's get Netherlands, Scotland, Oman, Uganda, Papua New Guinea. We want them playing cricket. Welcome them into the circle instead of just worrying about 3 nations playing cricket and focusing on yourselves. Like, let's spread the cricketing joy. Even the USA thing is a little bit fun as well. There was that White Ferns. So we had the White Ferns squad to tour England. I'm not sure when we discussed it, if we discussed it last week on the Niche Cast or not, but that has been followed up with the contracts. And I don't care about the contracts. I am interested though, because this contract list reaffirmed something that was that was typical of the White Ferns in the squad announcement to tour England. Kate Anderson was not in the squad, and Kate Anderson no longer has a contract. So in the latest installment of White Ferns shenanigans and just general losing stuff, the White Ferns gave Kate Anderson a contract last year. There were lots of stories about how awesome Kate Anderson's contract was and what an opportunity. Fantastic. Kate Anderson played 4 T20 internationals, which is her weaker format. She's a better one-day player than a T20 player. She only played T20 internationals. A year later, she is no longer in the White Ferns contract list, and she is no longer in any White Ferns squads. Makes no sense. And it makes no sense just trying to track what the White Ferns are telling us. Like, this is an opinion. This is just following the steps from the White Ferns. They give a player a contract, they select her in a weaker format, they kick her out, they take away her contract. Makes no sense. I don't understand. And that's coming as they lose games. So it's a weirdo spot, and I would like to, celebrate. Yeah, Polly Ingalls, she's got a contract. Fantastic. It means nothing. It might be a one-year wonder. She might not even play for the White Ferns. Like, it literally means nothing to get a White Ferns contract. Good, bad, and different. So it's the White Ferns, they're doing their thing. We'll see how that tour in England goes. They lost 3 out of 4 series in New Zealand last summer. They're still doing weird selections. They're still doing weird contracts. They're still losing games. But when you look around the Aotearoa media, case in point, last year's stories about Kate Anderson getting a contract, they're super positive. Lovely. Honkadori. White Ferns. Really doing some stuff. So shout out to the White Ferns. Still doing their weird stuff.
Is Polly Ingalls going to England?
No.
Oh, well. Enjoy the contract, though.
The White Ferns have gone, in the space of 6 months to a year, they selected 3 different wicketkeepers. Jess McFadyen, Bernadine Bezodenhout, and Izzy Gaze. 2 of them are gone. And now they've got Izzy Gaze, but they've brought in a 4th wicketkeeper in Polly Ingalls for a contract. And
I'm guessing Bezodenhout had a contract, right? And she's retired, so that's probably the only reason Ingalls has stepped up.
Yeah, but there's also Jess McFadyen, who's probably the best wicketkeeper in New Zealand. But
yeah, but we don't select our best players.
Yeah, because they are the originators. That's too logical. They're the originators of don't select your best players and lose. The Blackcaps are trying to emulate that tactic. Bezodenhout, she was celebrated last year. She's on the comeback. She's got a contract. A year later, she's retired. None of this makes any sense. And I've done a big preview, so you can check it out. Lots of stats, lots of wrinkles, lots of moaning. Kate Anderson has better domestic cricket batting stats than Lauren Down and someone else. I can't remember off the top of my head who I compared it to. Probably need to pull that up just to confirm. But there's a case to be made. Kate Anderson's a better batter than Lauren Down. But Lauren Down, she gave birth, so she's a superhero and she's back in the team. Respect to all the mums out there and the woman bouncing back after giving birth. Fantastic. Lauren Down is not an automatic white Fern. And Michaela Gregg, she's been called into the squad. But Kate Anderson has better one-day and T20 batting stats in domestic cricket than Lauren Down and Michaela Gregg. But Kate Anderson's the one who's been kicked out. I don't really get it. And we're just hoping that the same process leads to different results in England. So that will be very exciting, enthralling to see what happens with the White Ferns in England. You've done a big thing about flying Kiwis transfers and the footballing market around the world. Start with the Phoenix, though. What's happening with the Phoenix, men or women?
Well, it's okay. We'll do men first because Alex Paulson is probably the big name, the big blockbuster there, having left. They don't really have to do anything. Is the weird thing with the Wellington Phoenix blokes at the moment is most of their players are under contract. However, as we've seen with Alex Paulson leaving, under contract doesn't necessarily mean remaining at the club. It might just mean transfer fee is on the way. So Paulson's left. That probably means they don't have to sell anyone else if they don't want to. But if the right opportunity comes along, they're not going to just disregard their whole strategy of developing players to sort of platform them to send them to bigger situations overseas. If an offer comes in for Finn Sermon or Sam Sutton or so Ben Old, for example, they're gonna humor it at the very least. And it was suggested in the sort of press conference when Alex Paulson left, it was suggested that there had been at least some inklings into some of those other players. So all those three guys that I mentioned, I think are the three ones to watch out for. All three of them, along with Paulson, likely to be going to the Olympics, and all three of them, along with Paulson, will be in and a couple other Phoenix players will be in the Nations Cup squad for the All Whites starting in about a week's time from now. So they're all fairly busy. The Phoenix will have to find a new goalkeeper, though. Jump in.
Can you just give us a hard and fast list of players who will be in the Nations Cup event and or the Olympics as part of a shop window situation? Like, who's up for grabs in those tournaments and those events? Because there are, like, the Olympics is under 23s, and there's a young skew to this Nations Cup tournament, and a lot of these flying Kiwis dudes who are making moves are the younger dudes who have impressed in their club teams around the world. Now they're going to be, maybe not the Nations Cup. Like, I don't know how many scouts around the world are going to be in the Solomon Islands or wherever this event is being held, but the Olympics especially will be a shop window situation.
Yeah, Vanuatu for the Nations Cup. The Olympics is the shop window, but this squad is being used as preparation for that. So there will be a lot of crossover. There's, I think, 10 out of 21 players who are eligible for both, who are in the Nations Cup squad, who will probably be going to the Olympics as well, plus potential for one or two overage players like Kikache or Tim Payne might be in that conversation, for example. I think it seems like a bit of a no-brainer if they're available that Chris Wood and Sarpreet Singh would be two of the overage players. That isn't if they're available, because Sarpreet Singh's now a free agent looking for a new club, and Chris Wood's a newlywed. But I suspect Woodsy will be there. We'll see how it goes with Singh. It might depend on his club situation. But yeah, Payne and Kikache would definitely be options for that. But who are those 10 players? Alex Paulson, Tyler Bindon, Finn Sermon, Lucas Kelly-Heald, Sam Sutton, Ben Old, Finn Conchi, Ben Wayne is under 23 still. Max Mata just misses out, but Jesse Randall would be there, and Oscar Van Hattem as well would also be in that conversation. So there's a few dudes from that squad who are likely to also be going to the Olympics. So maybe Oscar Van Hatten, if he has a good Olympics, might put himself in the same conversation as Sutton Old and Sermon. Definitely Tyler Bindon is a dude who will already have a lot of scouting attention on him, and a strong Olympic campaign would help his cause no end. A few of those other guys like Ben Wayne's moved relatively recently. I guess Finn Conchi could potentially be in a similar spot to Van Hatten. Jesse Randall's just signed with Auckland FC, so won't be anything on the immediate horizon for him, I shouldn't think. And obviously Alex Paulson has just made a very significant move. Like, he's already got that transfer, so he's not auditioning for another one. But it is, that's the funky thing, is we've got a bunch of players who wouldn't be in transfer consideration because they've just made transfers, and yet there's still a large portion where you can say, yeah, but the rest of them, there's not going to be very many weak links in that side, especially when you also start to bring in guys like, I would imagine Jay Herman would probably be in the Olympic squad, and Marko Stamenic should be in there. Matt Garbett, Marko Stamenic is very likely to be making a move to Coventry City soon, which, if that goes down for the fee that has been reported / suggested, then that would make him the second most expensive New Zealand footballer ever, after Chris Wood, who has about, to be fair, Chris Wood's third best transfer fee would be about 3 times what Stamenic is going to go to Coventry for. But nobody else is in that ballpark ever. Like, he'd be overtaken Winston Reid to West Ham, which was more than 10 years ago. The Stamenic thing, like, the Serbian media are convinced it's happened. They're already, like, they just signed a new midfielder today, Savannah Zvezda, and the Serbian media is like, well, here's your Marko Stamenic replacement kind of thing. Whereas the English media around Coventry are a bit more like, there's conversations, but we're not done. There's certainly been no deal agreed to or anything. Like, they're putting a little bit of water on the fire, which I think is just playing it safe. But it seems like that's pretty much a done deal. Apparently, Marko Stamenic is in London right now, or is in England at least, which, like, he was in Greece a week ago, so he's on his holidays, but it's a little bit too convenient otherwise. So I'd imagine that gets announced potentially tomorrow. I was actually wondering if it might be announced today in time for Flying Kiwis. I saved a spot for him in the top of the list, but it might have to wait till next week. But yeah, there's a lot of let alone, like, Jackie Hand is probably looking for a new club. Who else? Annalete is probably looking for a new club. Sarpreet Singh, I've mentioned. Rhea Percival and Alex Grieve, I think, will probably just sign with the teams they were on loan with last year, now that their original contracts have run down. But those are still pretty significant moves, which would put them back in top division clubs in England and Scotland, respectively. I did a little bit of a ranking of how much I'm anticipating certain transfers and anticipating/expecting. And we've also, to swing it back around to the Phoenix again, but the women's Phoenix team this time, who not so long ago sold Macy Fraser for an A-League record transfer fee to the NWSL. Well, since then, we've had news that Marissa Vandermeer has re-signed, which is nice because you've got to keep some players. But Kate Taylor and Grace Wisniewski, curiously enough, Wisniewski and Vandermeer both still recovering from ACL injuries. Kate Taylor and Grace Wisniewski have both told the club that they will not be signing new contracts. Taylor, it said, specifically seeking overseas opportunities or exploring overseas opportunities. Wisniewski, it just kind of said exploring other opportunities, so that might leave some room open in the wording to suggest maybe another A-League club. But the impression I get is probably looking to go overseas. But there's a couple of Phoenix players right there who potentially could, like, skyrocket themselves into the Flying Kiwis realms themselves. And yeah, the Phoenix women are not quite so sorted as the Phoenix blokes, who have like 17 or 18 players under contract, something like that. I think the women have 7 players under contract, and that's including Vandermeer. So they've got a lot more work to do in terms of bringing back the core. A couple of their imports have already signed elsewhere or said they are leaving. Currently, no imports on the board. couple of those 7 players are still scholarship players. So but I do think probably it seems very likely that they've made signings behind the scenes that just haven't been announced yet. So I don't think that's necessarily something to freak out about. For example, you get these little clues in the New Zealand football squad announcements sometimes. So I thought it was pretty notable when Alex Grieve was listed for this Nations Cup squad as being a Dundee United player, because Dundee United said like a month ago that his loan had ended and he'd officially gone back to St Mirren. But then St Mirren said that his contract is over and now he's been released. So he could potentially, this is what I'm saying, I think he'll probably just re-sign with Dundee United. So New Zealand football listing him as a Dundee United player suggests that maybe he's already been registered there and it hasn't been announced yet. They did the same thing with the football Ferns squad recently as well, where Michaela Foster was listed as a Phoenix player. Kate Taylor was listed as a free agent. Neither of them have Phoenix contracts right now, kind of hinting that maybe Foster's already signed an extension. We just don't know about it yet.
What do you view as the scope for Kate Taylor? Is she someone who can pick up a decent gig around the world? Is, I imagine, like a robust defensive kind of midfielder, very Kiwi style of footballer. Is that in demand?
Maybe. I mean, it's like a little bit of a case by case situation somewhere, for sure. Somewhere that is in demand. I'm not entirely, because I wouldn't be surprised if she signed at a Scandinavian club, for example, where a lot of other New Zealanders who've done well in the A-League, like Claudia Bunge and Malia Steinmetz, have gone down that path. I think she has enough potential to where I wouldn't rule out like a WSL or NWSL club trying to step in and saying like, this is maybe not a first 11 player for next year, but here's a project player. We think in 2 years we could get something really impressive out of, similar to like Millie Clegg going to Racing Louisville. So I think the ceiling is as high as the ceiling gets. It's just a matter of, is there a club willing to take that gamble at this point in time? I don't know. Also, wouldn't be surprised if she ended up somewhere a little bit less significant, where she's going to play more often. This is why it's fascinating, is because I think there's a very wide range between what a realistic transfer for her at this point in time might be. Similar with Grace Wisniewski, because the fact she's coming back from injury is like someone's headhunting here, like someone's had the highlights and the scouting report in the bag for quite a while if they're offering her a contract before she's even proven her fitness again, coming back from a serious injury. Like, someone's been waiting for this one. And if anything, that makes it more likely that it might be a big club that would be willing to do something like that. So I don't know. I think both those two players have huge potential and are also pretty bloody good right now as it is. And I think if they played for teams that were, making A-League playoffs rather than the Phoenix team, who have sort of had a slow build to their on-field success in the first 3 years, I think that might have been a little bit more recognized from the get-go. But the scouts know how to look beyond the team results. They know how to find this stuff. I'm super curious as to where each of them might end up, because, like I say, Wisniewski might just sign with another A-League team. Like, it might just be she's playing for Sydney FC or something next year. I don't know. But there's such a wide range of scope to where I might feasibly refresh the Twitter feed tomorrow morning, see that they've signed somewhere, and not be completely surprised. There's a lot that could entail, and at some point, the next few weeks, at some point, that moment will happen. I will refresh the Twitter feed and I will see their name with a scarf or a jersey from some other club somewhere around the world, and I don't know what that'll be right now.
Do you think the Phoenix are leaning towards signing more overseas players for the women, Phoenix women? Do you think they are leaning towards signing more overseas players or promoting from within? Or a 50-50 split?
Well, they'll fill out their import spots again. I don't know if you'll see too much from them signing Australian locals. I think there might be one or two, like it's a sort of, if the right player is around. with the right amount of A-League experience kind of thing. But I the I don't think the academy is quite stocked enough to be able to fill out first 11 players in the way that the men's team was able to last year. I think that was a bit of a freak instance. Um, there will be some, absolutely, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're looking to sign a few sort of more experienced or at least capped football ferns or some of the New Zealanders who were playing for Australian clubs last season. I wouldn't be surprised if some of that goes down. And they might have to fill out a couple Aussies as well just to keep the standards up. But yeah, because they've lost Macy Fraser, they've lost Kate Taylor to they're going to lose Grace Wisniewski, but she didn't play last season barely outside of first couple games. Let alone like someone say Chloe Knott, I think was a fairly significant loss when she departed quarter of the way through the season. Like there's players there that is not necessarily a like for like replacement available. Maybe there is, like maybe they re-sign Alyssa Wynnum and she can take it to the next level and do some of those Macy Fraser things. I don't know, but they've got they've got some problems to figure out there. But the players are available. It's just a matter of picking the right ones.
They seem to have a direct line to American players, so I imagine they might be able to pick up some experience from America. But let's finish in the NBL department, where the Canterbury Rams, they have gone to the top of the table in the NBL. They've got an 11-2 record, and they have played 2 less games than the Auckland and Tuatara, who are in second on 12-3. So the Canterbury Rams, that tells you they're the best team in the NBL right now, and they did defeat the Auckland Tuatara. And as we alluded to earlier in the show, Taylor Britt was awesome, and he's in that Tall Black squad for the Olympic qualifying.
He's in the wider squad, but he was one of the reserves. However, it sounds like Hiram Harris's injury is likely to keep him out of that tour, in which case someone from that reserve steps up. If you want to pick the most informed player, that is Taylor Britt, no doubt. If you want to pick the most like for like replacement, though, you might lean a bit more towards Dan Fotu, for example. So we'll see what that looks like. We probably won't find out until fairly close to the moment itself.
For those who haven't seen too much NBL basketball, Taylor Britt, he's just a smaller point guard who is just a straight-up general. He leads the team. He sets everyone up. You get him into the mid-range. You give him some space, which, excuse my basketballing ignorance, it did seem like the Tuatara were playing a bit more of the old droppy coverage, giving Taylor Britt some space. And as soon as Taylor Britt got into his mahi and he dribbled into within the 3-point arc, let's say, he just pulled up from mid-range. And he just kept dropping those shots, and it was like, well, you can't give Taylor Britt that space. So he's a fascinating basketball player because he is usually the smallest player in the court. He's a general, but if you give him space, he's going to score as well. And I especially like Taylor Britt in that Canterbury team because you'll be able to expand on this. There's a lot of long dudes in that Canterbury Rams outfit. And there's a lot of hard workers around Taylor Britt to make up for his size. Your big mate, Wally Brown, Walter Brown, Max Darling. There's a few imports as well. What's the Canterbury Rams roster like? Your mate, Kaya Isaac. There's 2 of them, right?
Yeah, Kaya and Tama.
Both playing for Canterbury. So, and they seem like pretty long dudes as well. So expand on the wider roster of the Canterbury Rams and how they are built around Taylor Britt, because Taylor Britt's awesome and he does lead the team admirably from a mana perspective, but also as well just pure basketball. What's happening around Taylor Britt that is so exciting and so effective for the Canterbury Rams?
Well, I broke down like stat leaders, different stat categories, which team was leading it in the newsletter yesterday. And the surprising thing was that outside of rebounding. Like they seem to be the best rebounding team. Outside of that, they don't really boss the league in any specific category. They're just really good at a lot of different things. And if you're yeah, if you're really good at rebounding and good enough at everything else, good enough being like top half contending at most other things, you're going to be a pretty solid team. And I think they are quite like, they'd probably prefer if they could nail a couple more 3-pointers. They've got a little like MJ Walker will shoot a few. The weird thing about Britt is that his scoring thing is the scoring this season compared to last season has gone up by like 4 or 5 points per game while he's shooting less and worse from 3-point range. So shows you he's I think in other games he's getting to the rim a little bit more and not necessarily shooting, but sometimes laying that up, sometimes kicking it back out, just getting that the dribble penetration, as they say. In this game in particular, which makes sense against a team that has Rob Lowe and Tom Vodanovic and Ruben Turangi, like there's some big bodies, some very strong dudes, and also in particular when it comes to Lowe, like some solid rim protection there. He was just pulling up and shooting the mid-ranges instead, but he did that all day long and he just kept hitting them. He shot like 10 or 14, I think 25 points. So you got a dude there who is a very good leader, a very composed ball handler. He will get the ball where it needs to go, but you've also got like, Lachlan Olbrich, I think, had a bit of a quiet game in that one. But I think the fact that Rob Lowe only scored 7 points reflects very well on Olbrich, is the dude who was up against him predominantly. So he's an Aussie import who's had a very strong season. They actually have not lost since he joined the team. Their couple of losses at the start of the season were before he joined. Then he joined, and now they've won 10 in a row. Kenneth Buffin as well is a solid import who defends very well and can do a lot of not exceptional at anything, but does a lot of things just above average, like the team themselves. Extremely well coached by Judd Flavel. It's and good Kiwi depth as well, like the dudes you mentioned, Max Darling. Kai Isaac, Tama Isaac, coming off the bench as well. Taki Farronson, who hasn't really even done anything this season, but he's a guy who could score 20 points in a night if the opportunity arose. Walter Brown, Taylor Britt, like it's a strong roster. There's a reason they won last season. But when they did win last season, it was with Corey Webster as well. Corey Webster's playing for the Tuatara now. So they beat him in this game. They played against him. They've absorbed the loss of the guy who I would imagine was their top scorer. He was definitely absolutely influential in the semi and the final last season. They've just handled that and looking like the best team again after a little bit of a slow start. Once they got their roster sorted, which often happens with NBL teams, it takes a month before you're at full strength and everyone's available. The Rams got there and they haven't lost since. So there are ominous signs for the rest of the league. But that was a very good game against the Tuatara, who I think in general, their second half shooting performance was pretty rancid, and that's just not going to be the case for them more often than not. So I think a rematch, they would back themselves to certainly score a lot more than 82 or 84 points or whatever it was. I think if that game is up in the mid 90s or above, it's probably a Tuatara victory, because I think they can outshoot anyone except maybe the Wellington Saints. If it becomes a shootout like that, that's a Tuatara fate. If it becomes a defensive grind, that seems to be a Canterbury Rams preference, which is what we got, and particularly in the second half of that game, and it's how the Rams were able to win because they got more stops down the stretch. It wasn't like when you rebound that well, I guess that becomes. Although I think Tuatara are the second best rebounding team, so if that's why no one was getting the buckets at the end, except for Taylor Britt. He was the one dude who seemed to be able to score in the clutch, and perhaps that was just the difference.
Is there anyone else who comes to mind, recent New Zealand sporting events, who contributes to winning as much as like Olbrich?
Yeah, Jazz Tavanga.
Yeah, that's my point. So we got Olbrich, who's an Aussie, but he's undefeated with the Canterbury Rams, who are the best team in the NBL right now. Jazz Tavanga, highly influential on Warriors winning footy. Anyone else come to mind in the New Zealand sporting department?
Marko Stamanic winning league and cup doubles in consecutive years with different club in different countries each time. I think that's pretty handy. he was playing for like teams that were already very good though. So we'll see if he can get Coventry promoted from the championship. Then we've got flawless proof of this concept. But we'll leave it written in pencil rather than pen for now. But I mean, I don't know who else would we chuck on there.
Well,
Probably not Devon Conway right now.
So Marko Stamenic is a pure winner. Like, he's doing winning stuff, but there's nothing to suggest that when he's in and out of that team, they win or they lose. I can't think of anyone in the cricket. Like, I mean, the White Ferns have lost with Sophie Devine in the team, with Susie Bates in the team, with Amelia Kerr in the team. The Blackcaps just lost with Kane Williamson and Trent Bolt in the team. You know, it's not Tamaita Martin at halfback, but I think Jazz Tavang is more important than Tamaita Martin. And there's a clear stat there. Anyone else? Sarpreet Singh for the All Whites?
Well, they don't win games, but
Yeah,
he makes the team better. He gets
there's
them
not
closer
enough
to
winning for the All Whites or the Football Ferns, so they aren't in the mix.
I don't know. Is there a domestic cricket battler who you could say that about?
I don't know. The cricket dude.
Just McFadden at Wellington?
Yeah, maybe. The one who pops to mind for the cricket is Rachin Ravindra, but there's no hard and fast stat to back that up that you've got with Albrick and Tavanga. So there's nothing to reinforce
we'll have to jot this down and do the research of the. We'll keep an eye out for these certified winners that we can find.
Righto, that is the niche cast for this Tuesday. Stay tuned for the subscriber podcast coming at the Patreon whānau and on Substack for the paid Substack subscribers. We'll be doing that on Friday. Otherwise, tap in with all things niche cache. Lots of content coming at you over the next few days. And stay tuned. Big up yourself. Love yourself. Kia kaha. Stay beautiful. Church.